Hello and welcome to A Moment's Portal, a podcast where members of the Global Innovation Gathering share stories on global innovation. I'm Daniela Marzavan.
And I'm Stan Gay, and together we'll be hosting this fourth episode, taking you with us to a moment in the work and life of Chris Doering. Tell me more about Chris.
Chris is a researcher responsible for the PhD program Eco-Social Innovation by Design at Luzern University, Switzerland, in collaboration with the National Institute of Design, India. So today you will witness two very special moments portals brought to you by Chris Doering. And Chris Doering was a co-founder with Jay Cousins of OpenDesignCity in the very first days of betahaus, Berlin's first coworking space, back in 2009, 10, 11. Chris Doering also worked a lot on different occasions for the German Cooperation Agency in Sri Lanka, in Egypt. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for inviting me. I'm excited to talk about this because it has been such a wonderful time back in the days.
We're just so old.
Yeah, we just grew so old in the meantime, and we had a pandemic in between.
So we started to the podcast like, do you remember when?
Yeah, I have a lot of those moments recently. It feels like some sort of revival also because the energy seems to be back after such a long time of, being just remote and having very structured meetings online and just randomly meeting people and sharing thoughts and ideas is super exciting.
And serendipity can really only happen in a physical space with good food and
it's serendipity, that's right.
At the river, right? Good, we'll share more of these stories. So maybe you can introduce yourself really quickly. For the listeners, we are currently all in Berlin, the whole gig, many people of the gig networks are here and they've met for our yearly meeting called Republica. So, Chris, tell us a little bit about your path and how you came to gig.
All right. So, back in the days, as mentioned before, I was one of the co-founders of a space called OpenDesignCity at betahaus, Berlin's first coworking space. And prior to that, I was part of a project called Paloma 5. And Paloma 5 was a 6-week kind of innovation residency where people from literally all around the world came together to talk about, think about, prototype about the future of work. And in this setting with all these amazing people from all over the place, I met a few people who remained in Berlin, who didn't travel back. And one of them was Jay Cousins, designer and inventor from the UK. And I actually, by the time I just moved to Berlin, so I was already, I made the decision to stay. With this energy from this innovation camp, we moved into the betahaus and we became a part of it. We started a space called OpenDesignCity, was a community-based innovation and makerspace.
One of the first makerspaces actually here, right?
Yes, there were a few initiatives around, but we literally started from scratch. We had some equipment from this camp, from Paloma 5, that we could bring. And most importantly, we had a broad network all of a sudden, an international network of people. Some people who were based in Berlin brought their equipment along and they were so excited about the idea of finally having a space, a location to meet up. And not, tinkering in their own basement and getting their partners annoyed and their neighbors.
I remember one story when someone brought like tons of bricks, like Lego bricks.
2 tons of Lego bricks.
Literally. And we built like a phone booth.
Yeah,
and
it was really exciting. Tons of Lego bricks from one person. Then another person with a self-made laser cutter, another one who just started a laser cutting business and he still runs that business. Another person who invented 3D scanner that worked with a swimming pool and coffee beans. And a camera, quite an amazing invention.
Wow.
Philipp Stephan, who was part of Baustellen, Montag, a meetup of makers in Berlin. He joined. He brought a 3D printer a MakerBot, one of the first models, I guess, number 3 or something. And so on. And we had stuff like, basic stuff like screwdrivers and circuits, sewing machines. I brought a sewing machine and a camera, and I had some other stuff. So it was like a super wild collection of equipment, whatever you felt you needed in a space like that. So very quickly, this community grew into something quite amazing with international community around it.
And before recording this podcast, you told us how one specific international community, namely Global Innovation Gathering, actually came to the betahaus, the OpenDesignCity in 2012, maybe?
Yeah, maybe. Yeah. So we had a group of people coming and visiting several spaces in Berlin, and one of those was OpenDesignCity. So I guess this was the first connection that we established. And then later on, Jay Cousins, one of the co-founders, moved to Egypt, commissioned by GIZ, the German development agency.
Okay. You are already taking us to your moment. Start. You know enough about Chris?
Yeah, now I know enough about Chris, and now I'm waiting for this. What happened in Egypt? There's a whole...
This magical event.
We're moving to the moments portal. So Chris, take us to a moment where you truly felt carried by the Global Innovation Gathering.
Yes, so that specific moment was at the Nile River in Egypt, at a tiny little island called Elephantine Island. Yeah, we went there. I was invited by my friend, Jay Cousins, who was working in the Egyptian context. And he said, hey, why don't you come over? We have this thing going on. I, by that time, was working at university in Weimar doing my PhD project. But I said, okay, I will drop everything and come over. And it was in the middle of the Arabic Spring, a lot of confusion and a lot of enthusiasm, both at the same time. And it was my first time in the region, and it was super exciting to be there and to meet so many brilliant, smart, energetic, enthusiastic people on this island together with the local community and come up with ideas how to innovate in that region, in southern Egypt.
So I remember one particular challenge that we had. And when we talk about a story, we'll look at a challenge, at a particular challenge, a community of concern. So could you tell us a little bit or take us to the moment where you or we all had the challenge to map the island?
Yes.
On a big piece of paper at the harbor?
Well, one thing I remember, we wanted to put a schedule at the harbor. Mm-hmm. So everyone from people from Alexandria, from Cairo, from Germany, from different places arrived and went on a ferry to cross the River Nile and arrive at the island. And we needed something at the harbor to point the people in the right direction. And we wanted to put agenda. We came up with an agenda, we put it on paper, we translated it to Arabic and Nubian and other languages. And then we wanted to hang it at a wall at the harbor. And we didn't expect a bunch of goats approaching us. We were like, oh, look at these goats. How funny. And then those goats, they were after the agenda. And they grabbed the agenda. And before we could do anything, they were eating the agenda up. And that became the running gag. Whenever anyone would ask us for an agenda, we would say,
what's the plan?
Well, what's the plan? What's going on? We would say, well, the goats ate the plan and the agenda. It was really funny, and we just never did agenda again. We came together to come up with ideas how to support the local community, a community of Nubian people primarily, because during that time, the area, the region was very heavily depending on tourism. With the Arabic Spring and the revolution and all those ups and downs politically, nobody came anymore. Mm-hmm. So the entire industry, who was the backbone of the local economy, was gone overnight, basically. After some time, people on the island started to think about, okay, what are our other options? Where can we do things differently? How does our future look like? And then people from Global Innovation Gathering made the connection. Yeah, the people on the island, and together with Jay Cousins and other people in the network, came up with the idea to meet up at the island and work with the community and
prototype the solutions together. And I think what I remember is that you have gig members from Cairo, from Alexandria, and from Aswan that connected really we called them back then university smart people, so
Right.
that had all this knowledge on how to do business models, how to sell things online to the communities of the Nubian villages.
Yeah, that was really a moment that was really an eye-opener for me, because I would say the people who participated came from very different backgrounds, both like locally as well as culturally, politically as well. But we somehow managed to create a space where that didn't play a role. We just came together as people on a mission to work together. So it was really hands-on, really pragmatic. And all these other things didn't really play a role. And that was an amazing moment for me to notice, okay, this is something that we can overcome if we really talk about the mission, and if we really share the mission, then we can do amazing things together. And this is also something that I noticed talking to one of my friends from the island after the event. I asked him, okay, what do you think? How did that benefit the community? And he said, we had ideas and we were talking about this and we were talking about that, but certain things never ever happened before. And that was that women and men would gather in the community space and talk about those issues together. Or that people from different political backgrounds would forget a moment about their different political backgrounds, come together and talk about the future of the island and of the area. And that was really amazing to see that we can create this momentum. It was not about very broad discussions around things where you could agree or disagree. It was really about hands-on. Just somebody would have an idea and then we would think about how we could prototype it right away. And yeah, that's what we did.
I think this is the moment to clarify that Daniela and I are part of GIG, the Global Innovation Gathering, and this is a moment that Daniela shared with Chris. And so that's why it has become a back and forth between them.
Yes, good point. I wasn't expecting you to share this moment, but it really brings up a lot of memories. We mostly finish our Moments Portal stories with a question. So who or what in your life would not be surprised about the Goat Ate a Plant story?
Yeah, what I love so much about the goats story and what happened there, that me coming from context where there are goats, but they are usually locked in a zoo kind of setup, and you go there to pet them and maybe feed them and look at them, and it's not, goats don't come and eat the agenda. That usually doesn't happen in Berlin. And it was something we just didn't expect. I remember Mustafa Darsh, who was standing next to them. We were like, no way, did you see this? What just happened? The goats just ate the agenda. I can't believe it. And then Mustafa Darsh was like, yeah, of course they do. They always do that. Like, well, what do you think?
They eat paper.
They eat paper. They eat whatever they can get. So he was not surprised at all. Of course, yeah, because that's what the goats do on the island. And yeah, and also improvising and not always going by a plan, by a master plan.
So the locals, the Nubians, were absolutely not surprised by this story. And to them, it was just life as usual. You go with the flow, you improvise. And that was a true learning for you.
Yes. And also, we just recently started to try and implement agile methodologies in management and in the schools and academia. And if you go to...
Just go to the Nubian village.
Yeah, if you go to a Nubian village or to Elephantine Island and many, many other places around the world, this is just
You'll get
common
the training
knowledge.
for free.
Yeah, it's to get the training for free, exactly.
Okay, we have a really quick second question. So could you take us to a moment in time when it was obvious to you that innovation is not just a Western affair?
Innovation often seems to be a Western affair, or it's claimed to be something that happens a lot or is pushed forward in Western contexts. But I think innovation happens all the time. Sometimes it's not claimed that way and it's not promoted in that way, but it happens naturally because people tend to working on improving their lives and improving the lives of their communities. While I was working in Sri Lanka on supporting the local innovation ecosystem, I was working with my colleague Heminda, and he was one of the greatest supporters of the local innovation ecosystem. He still is. With him and colleagues, he came up with the issue of tree planting in Sri Lanka. Sri Lanka has been suffering from deforestation for a long time, and he came up with the idea of mapping tree planting activities. And he didn't approach this from a technical way. He approached it from a social way. He organized community events about planting trees all over the island, and it became really a big thing in the Sri Lankan communities to be part of those events, have some sort of tree planting party, and then come with the kids, come with the families, really make it like a weekend holiday activity, plant the trees together with other people, get engaged with the local communities, and then put it on a map. So it can be, it's visualized, and the progress is also visualized. And then you can promote this to other communities and say, here, we are already doing this, or we already did this here and there. So other communities became interested in doing the same thing. So it really scaled up. They scaled it up to a level where they actually started to tree business attached to that. So had a very broad spectrum from visualizing, they had an app attached to that, and they had community events, and they had the gardening business attached to that. So it became really something from this initial observation of something missing. They really developed a solution in this local context that worked really, really well. I think it really came out from this desire and from the love for trees, but also from a very good observation what is really needed, and from a absolutely brilliant execution of those ideas. Bringing the right people together, bringing people from technology, from biology, from foresting together, and really making this a big success.
So who or what in your life would not be surprised about this story?
A lot of good things come out from a certain context and from a certain observation. And this usually comes from a certain mindset of wondering about things, not taking or not accepting things as they are. And this is something that my son, who just turned 6 years old, is not surprised at all to hear, because that is a kid's mindset. Kids are really brilliant at wondering about the world around them and asking very simple questions. And this happens a lot with my son. Sometimes I'm having problems sorting certain things out in everyday life, and I'm sharing this with him, and he's looking at me and he's like, what do you mean, what's the problem here? I why don't you take this and do that, and then it's done? And I'm super amazed by his ability to think that way and to make observations that I wouldn't make, because I'm 40 years old and not 6 years old. So I think this is an ability that is fantastic. And yeah, we if we manage to go back into that mindset, we can come up with great things and make great things happen.
Thank you so much, Chris. Star, how did you feel listening to these two stories? To the goats ate the plant story and to Wonder Like a Child story.
Well, it was very, very amusing and funny, and I like how the story turned out. I was really not expecting the goats as well. And it's just amazing. And also, the way you talked about, the mind of a child, I think we lose a lot of the curiosity as we grow up as well. Well, hearing about that sort of reminds me, about being this curious child, asking all the questions, and I think that is fantastic. Thank you so much for the story.
Yeah, thank you for the opportunity to go back in time and share those moments with you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Adios.
A Moments Portal is hosted by Daniela Marzavan and Stan Gay. Sound and editing, Dominik Grignac. Technical support, Pavel Gay. Music by Monster Logo Studios.